Happy New Year, everyone. Just want to say welcome to the first episodes of BEER-ating. It's a new year, a new show, and a new beer. So basically what's this going to consist of? Every week or maybe twice a week, depending on how it goes, I'll try a new beer, talk about it a little bit, and we'll go from there and then we'll rate it. So just to give a little bit of background, as anybody who knows from Facebook, this winter or this Christmas I did a Christmas Advent beer calendar. Basically I went to the liquor store, I picked up 24 beer randomly, beers I've never had before, came home, put a number on them 1 to 24 and drank them over Christmas. I had a lot of people enjoyed following me on Facebook with that and said I should continue with it. So I came up with this concept. As I said, it's basically a internet based beer rating show. Basically I'm calling it BEER-ating. So the beer that we're going to talk today is, as you can see here, Wexford Wheat. It's a wheat ale, and it's from the Yellowbelly Brewery here in St. John's, Newfoundland. And if anybody's been down there, they know Yellowbelly. It's on the corner of George and Water Street, so it's pretty well the heart of St. John's. And anybody who's been on George Street, they probably know where it's located. It's a gastropub. I believe it's the first gastropub in Newfoundland, basically fine food, fine ale. It's been around for almost a decade. I think there's like 5 floors. They have what they call a speakeasy on the bottom. They have another floor. I think they do catering and whatnot, and it's a nice location if you ever get the chance. The name Yellowbelly, I've never really thought much of it. You think of Yellowbelly, you kind of think of a cow type thing. That's what I actually thought as well. But I actually did a little bit of research getting ready for this program, and that's not where the name comes from at all. It's actually Irish immigrants between 1750 and 1830, and that time a lot of the immigrants came to Newfoundland for the fisheries. Well, a lot of these immigrants came from the county Wexford, and thus the name Wexford Wheat. The Yellowbelly actually comes from, they were hurling. I don't know if you've ever heard of hurling. It's kind of sort of like rugby. It's a big sport in Ireland. Well, the boys from Wexford, they were playing the team from Cornish, and they distinguished themselves by putting a yellow strip around their center. And actually, they won the match. And King George III at the time, he made a greeting for the boys, congratulations, and it was well done, Yellowbelly. So that's where the name Yellowbelly comes from. A little bit about this ale. Like I said, it's Wexford Wheat. It's a Yellowbelly beer. I've never had this one. It was recommended by my friend Ruth, so hopefully it'll be a good beer. It's what they call a American wheat ale, and if you're like me, I guess you know you'd hear lagers and ales and stouts and porters and everything else. And just to give you a little bit of background, basically beer can be broken down into either ales or lagers, and everything else pretty well falls under those two. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but we'll concentrate on this one. So actually I'm just going to crack her open, pour it up, and we'll go from there. Got my little mug here, Newfoundland Sayings. A little bit of a nice head on, a little bit more than I'm accustomed to. Normally you want about a ½ an inch to an inch head. So we'll just let that settle for a minute. As you can see from the color, it's not crystal clear. It's kind of a little bit cloudy, a little bit hazy. That's actually quite common for wheat ales. It's one of their things. A nice little aroma to it. Just let that settle for a minute. As I said, it's Wexford Wheat. It's an American wheat ale. Obviously it falls under the ale category. It's the Yellowbelly. Actually, they do, I believe, 4 or 5 different types of beer there. They do one they call the Fighting Irish, St. John Stout, maybe one of the ones we'll look at in the future. This one is actually their lightest in palate and flavor, more or less, actually color and body. So it's one of their lighter beers. I think on their website, it's more or less, they said it's kind of like their answer to Coors Light or one of the common beers. The wheat in it, from their website again, if you go to yellowbelly.com, they talk about their different beers and give you a little bit of background on it. They say also the wheat in it gives it a green apple or a sour plum, little flavoring. So we'll see how it goes. It's highly carbonated beer, you know, got a nice little head on it, and as we said, it's a little bit hazy in color, which is quite common for wheat ales. So we'll give a little taste to start off. It's not a bad little taste. With this program too, after every beer, at the end of the show or the program, however you want to call it, I'll give the beer a rating between 1 and 5. I'll say, you know, I give this beer, you know, a 3 rating or whatever the case might be. You know, honestly, I'm no connoisseur of beer, I'm no beer expert. This is just my own personal preference, what I think. So just because I give it a 3, doesn't mean, you know, you're going to give it a 3, or if I give it a 5, you're going to give it a 5. But there's only one way to find out, right? Hit your liquor store, pick one up, give it a try, let me know what you think, if you agree with my rating. I'm not going to give it a rating right away. I'm going to enjoy it a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about whatever, and at the end I'll give it a rating. Has a little bit of taste to it. Like with ales in general, you normally get a little bit of a fruit flavor type thing. Not all ales, obviously, but ales are known for that. I'm not a big one like for fruit beers. You know, you get your apricot beer and your plumber. I'm not a big fruit one, but I don't mind a little bit of flavor. This has a nice little flavor to it. There's not a lot of aftertaste, which is something I like. Wheat ales in general, they're known as an easy drinking beer type thing. You know, there's not a lot of aftertaste. A lot of times, if you go online and do a little bit of research, you say a lot of wheat ales. It's kind of, you know, one of those ones where on a hot summer day you want something refreshing. A lot of times I'll recommend a wheat ale. As I said, with Yellowbelly itself, this is actually one of their, what they call their lightest in palate, color, and body. So it's a light beer for for Yellowbelly breweries. I just said Kitty Vitty. It's another local brewery. They do 4 or 5 different beers. So hopefully in the future we'll try one of those. Now, as I'm enjoying my beer, well, you know, every week we'll find another little topic to talk about, just to something beer related or just something in general. So today I'm just going to follow up on something I said earlier. I said basically all beers, they fall within the category either an ale or a lager, whether it be a stout, a pilsner, a bitter, an IPA, whatever it is. Generally they can fall under one of those 2 categories. There may be exceptions, as I said before. I'm no beer expert, no connoisseur. I'm just average Joe that likes a beer. So if you have one you're not sure about and you don't know if it falls under ale or if it falls under lager, once again, just make a comment and we can talk about it next time. So I'm just going to give a little difference from my research, the difference between a lager and an ale. Excuse me. As I said, ales, IPAs, Indian Pale Ale, obviously that falls under ale. Stouts, believe it or not, most famous stouts, I guess, what people would say would be a Guinness. Actually, Yellowbelly, they have a stout too, a St. John's stout. I've had it once before. Not a bad beer. Hopefully in the future we'll look at that as well. Wheat ales obviously fall under ale, and also brown. I'm sure there's other ones, but those are just the general ones I can find. For lagers, pilsners fall under lagers, and obviously, you know, if you look at the liquor store, there's a lot that are just labeled as lagers. Pilsners, another one, Bock. I'm not familiar with Bock. Hopefully I can find one somewhere along the way. We can talk a little bit about that, but that would fall under a lager as well. And this is what I found online. They said Oktoberfest. Now I don't know if that's, I've never heard of, I've obviously heard of Oktoberfest, the festival, but Oktoberfest, I didn't realize it was a special category of beer, but apparently it is, and that would fall under lager as well. The difference between an ale or a lager, it basically comes down to the yeast used during fermentation. That makes all the difference. So if you look at a lager and ale, there's obviously different, you know, in color and body and whatnot, but all the differences when it comes down to it, it has to do with the yeast, which in turn obviously affects the fermentation. With an ale, Fermentation is always under warm conditions. As well, the yeast, you might hear the top term, yeast on top, yeast on bottom. With ales, the yeast during the fermentation process is on the top. And as I said before, normally with ales, it might not be right in your face, but ales normally have almost like a fruity palate, a fruity taste to it. So that's ales. And as I said, IPA, stouts, wheat, brown, they all fall under ales. Ales, sorry, I keep saying ales. Ales. The next one will be lagers. As we said, ales, you need warm conditions for fermentation. And lagers, it's cold conditions for fermentation. And the yeast is on the bottom as opposed to ales where the yeast is on top. Lagers normally have a little bit of a clean taste, a crisp taste to it. It's not like the ales where you get a little bit of a fruit flavor. Lagers are normally a little bit more of a crisp flavor. And also, I didn't know it as well. I don't know the exact time frame, but lagers are actually fairly new compared to ales. Like ales have been around for centuries, whatever the case might be. That could be another show in itself. But when you look at the big overall time frame, lagers are actually fairly new. And another one I found out, the yeast used for a lager is not found in the wild in Europe. I'm not sure the rest of the world, but in Europe it's not found. So the yeast that's used for a lager is actually controlled by man type of thing. It's not found out in the wild. And so that's basically the difference between an ale and a lager. And that pretty well concludes our first episode. Like I said, it's only a short little episode, 10-15 minutes. And we'll taste a beer, we'll talk about a beer, and we'll go from there. It's like I said, new show, January 1st, 2019, new show, a new year, and a new beer, and hopefully you'll join me next time and we'll try another beer. And for the Wexford Ale, not a bad beer. I'm enjoying it so far. I would say out of 5, I will give this beer a 4. It's a nice beer, definitely worth your taste. Like I said, you might not agree with me if you try it yourself. If you haven't tried it, hit your local NLC. For people outside Newfoundland, I don't know, perhaps you can hit the website or talk to your local. If not, I guess you have to come to Newfoundland. And if you come to Newfoundland, you come to St. John's. You're definitely going to hit George Street. And if you're on George Street, hit the Yellowbelly. So as I said, I'm going to give this beer, my first one, Wexford Wheat. I'll give it 4 beers. Cheers, bottom up. Enjoy responsibly. Until next time.